who every year put in practice notions of common good and social responsibility. Thank you. Before I invite our host, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Slovenia, Ms. Tanja Fajon, let me wrap up this short introduction with my deepest thanks to the BSF team, which every year remind me that we should never underestimate the power, energy, perspective, and wisdom of young people. And I would say also those who are young at heart. Thank you very much. Okay, and now it's time to start working towards the common good. Please, Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you to your team. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Preparing a speech about solidarity, the underpinning theme of this year's Bled Strategic Forum is not a difficult task at a time when we are under the impression of the recent floods in Slovenia, the biggest natural disaster in Slovenia's recent history. At the outset, I wish to express my deepest gratitude to all individuals and institutions in Slovenia and abroad who helped our country and our people in these very difficult moments. You are all our heroes. And to show solidarity with the people whose homes were flooded, belongings destroyed, factories, farmland and crops ruined, we felt it was inevitable to adjust the program of this forum. Under the slogan BSF stands in solidarity, we are giving every participant of this year's Bled Strategic Forum an opportunity to help those affected by the floods. And your kind gesture will be very much appreciated. At the same time, we understand that it is equally important to proceed with the Bled Strategic Forum so that we can discuss, that we can brainstorm and seek possible solutions to some of the most pertinent global problems affecting us all. The Bled Strategic Forum is of particular significance for all Slovenian politicians and diplomats who will engage in discussions and actions aimed at strengthening international peace and security during Slovenia's tenure in the UN Security Council in the 2024-2025 period. Since we perfectly understand that cooperation and solidarity lead to overall betterment, Slovenia will remain committed to its UN Security Council campaign slogan, building trust, securing the future. No global challenge today can be properly addressed with global action. And no global action can be prepared and carried out without solidarity and compromise. With the war in Ukraine and other armed conflicts around the globe, global food and energy supply disruptions, and poverty and the COVID-19 pandemic, cybersecurity, the world calls for our joint action. And rather than making us fall into defeatism about the problems looming on the horizon, we must act now. If do not start solving problems urgently, our generation and the generations to come will collectively pay a huge price. This world will change dramatically and uncontrolled fashion, also through natural disasters and armed conflicts. It is our duty to ensure that such scenarios be avoided. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand today on this podium not only as a Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of European and Foreign Affairs, but also as a Social Democrat, fully committed to what is called enlightened solidarity, based on the understanding that solidarity is not only a moral and human imperative, but also our investment for the common benefit. In my capacities, I envision a just global system where poverty is eradicated, where income balance and gender balance are the norm, where the world successfully combats climate change and implements transition to green energy sources, where we promote human rights, and so on. And equally important are the rule of law, media freedom, and honoring international commitments and principles such as respect of sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, as well as the peaceful resolution of conflicts. To me, global inequality is a particular concern today, in conflict with my political and personal view that all people should have equal opportunities. According to the World Inequality Report 2022, the richest 10% of the global population currently takes 52% of the global income and owes 76% of the world's wealth. Here one should bear in mind the conclusion of the report: the inequality is a political choice, not inevitability. And the biggest political obstacle to global solidarity and security in the future is populism, a political method that includes distorting and faking facts, a political method that, among others, purposely creates tensions within our societies and internationally for pre-calculated political gains, a political method that represents a challenge to science and common sense, as well as to our societies. By way of illustration, imagine how difficult it is to fight climate change if it doesn't exist, as some populists wrongly and deliberately claim, or how difficult it is to integrate legal migrants if populists automatically consider them a threat to their traditional lifestyle as an intruders in their homes, and also what damage artificial intelligence can do if used by wrong hands. Therefore, the least we can do to ensure stability and solidarity is to forge a strong international coalition, supporting international organizations and institutions. It is equally important to regulate the fight against disinformation and the fake news, and thus take away the critical tool for the populists. We must also properly regulate the artificial intelligence. And without addressing those phenomena, solidarity-based actions, and even worse, the entire concept of solidarity are seriously hampered, and consequently, the world may slide into chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, in its essence, international solidarity is as strong as multilateralism, and vice versa. In fact, the strengthening of international solidarity and security also, if not mostly, depends on effective multilateral system. That is why we must collectively and wholeheartedly support the implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are an embodiment of cooperation and represent at the same time an indispensable stabilization instrument. Urgent actions are necessary to implement the goals of no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and so on. The times are unfortunately less than ideal for implementation of these noble sustainable development goals, which are often sidelined due to other challenges. And today we probably live in the most dynamic period since the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, in a period of rapid changes. The war in Ukraine accelerated polarization. China and the United States have been competing to prevail politically and economically in Indo-Pacific and Africa. And the EU and US have been trying to adjust to these new realities, including by building and expanding a global networks of partnerships. There are two main, or at least two main priorities for Slovenia. First, to stop the war in Ukraine. And second, to use the momentum and enlarge the European Union to the Western Balkans. As we speak about the membership of the Eastern European neighborhood countries to the EU. Value-based approach can help us significantly in this respect. And regardless of the changing power relations, we must conduct well-managed reforms of international institutions. In fact, discussions about the reform of UN Security Council have been ongoing, probably for too long. My African colleagues have been repeatedly stressing a valid argument that Africa should have a permanent seat in the Security Council, since some 70% of the Africa agenda is being discussed in the Security Council. Indeed, it seems illogical and this should be amended. And rebalancing of the international financial system, what we know as the Bretton Woods arrangement, is also necessary to enable to developing countries to finance development reforms with sustainable costs. The UN Secretary General has already spoken publicly about this. And despite the evident deficiencies of the existing multilateral system and existing tensions in the international community, I remain optimistic. There is simply no alternative to multilateral global cooperation. Last year, I talked to around 150 colleagues from all continents, and they all supported strong multilateral institutions and cooperation. I'm very proud of the fact that Slovenia received such high international recognition by the UN Security Council vote back in June. And time is not on the side of humanity, not only with regard to matters such as environment protection, but also with regard to many other global challenges. This notion should only motivate us to act immediately and decisively. And ladies and gentlemen, according to the Armed Conflict Survey, in last year there are 33 active conflicts in the world. But we speak above all about Ukraine due to the impact of this conflict on the world order. We support Ukraine and show solidarity with this country because we would like to see peace restored on our continent as soon as possible. We would like to see Ukraine having a fair chance of finalizing a lasting and just peace, and in addition, we would like to see peace turning into a different kind of solidarity, to collaborate on the reconstruction of Ukraine, and finally, to renew the security architecture in Europe that will guarantee a lasting peace in this part of the world. And overall, Europeans should feel lucky to live in prosperity, to live on the continent with the smallest differences among states, to live in the EU community, which implements solidarity through regional and structural funds and other mechanisms. These instruments have narrowed income and development gaps between Eastern and Western Europe since the reunification of the continent. Indeed, we are the lucky part of the world. And I was saddened because of the floods in our country, but also very proud to be a Slovenian and a European because of solidarity. And I must say that I am satisfied to be a European citizen for yet another reason. The EU is the biggest donor of international aid, providing more than 50 billion euros per year to so-called third countries. This is an enormous contribution to fighting poverty and encouraging development. And it is our collective contribution to international stability through solidarity. Finally, I would like to end my maybe longer opening remarks with an invitation to all of you to show solidarity with the organizers and other participants by joining in the discussions and arguing your positions with eagerness and candor. As we speak, again, we are having heavy rains in Slovenia, and our people fear the worst again. I cannot leave the podium without thanking profoundly Secretary General Peter Grk and his team for putting together the most substantial and the most up-to-date Bled Strategic Forum by now. And I look forward to participating in a search for global solidarity to unlock the solutions for our common future, in peace with nature and ourselves. By way of conclusion, let me again recall that you can donate to those affected by the floods in Slovenia. I sincerely thank you all for your attention, understanding, and solidarity, and wish you all many good ideas, inspiration, numerous new friendship, and a memorable or unforgettable stay in Slovenia. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Slovenia, Dr. Robert Golob.
Spoštovani predsednik Evropskega sveta, Charles Michel, dragi Charles. Spoštovane gostje in gosti, cenjeni, dobrodošli na Bledskem forumu, dobrodošli v Sloveniji. Dear Charles, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bled's Strategic Forum, welcome to Slovenia. This month, on August the 3rd, Slovenia was hit by the most devastating floods ever registered in our history. Within a matter of hours, 10,000 of homeowners lost their homes. Families lost everything, not just material things. I would also like to express my gratitude to all of you, all of those who already helped, some of you who already donated, and others perhaps that will contribute in the following hours, because it's by showing this solidarity is that we show that cooperation on international level, it's really what makes the world better. And I think this is one message we shall never forget, not just when we are in dire times, because you never know when things may get difficult for you. And as Peter Gerg was saying, in Europe sometime, or most of the time, we live under the impression that bad things do not happen around here. They happen far away, far abroad. Well, Not anymore. Extreme weather that we are facing is, of course, localized. It's a localized phenomenon, but it happens because of global development. And yes, climate change is not something that any of us can escape. It is here, it is happening. We can see its impact practically every year. It's hardly predictable, if not unpredictable. The only predictable thing about climate change is that it's not going to get any better by itself. But this is a message that we shall never forget. It is hard, because on the paper, especially if I forget about those naysayers, but I will just exclude them from the picture because I'm pretty sure there's no naysayer in here. So on the paper, everything is clear. We just need to undertake green transition. We just need to make it just for the undeveloped countries, and everything will fall in the right place. But unfortunately, I think we already missed the opportunity to do it as simple as that. Perhaps 30 years ago that was the case, not anymore. Right now we live in a world where we need to face the consequences as well. So it's not enough to clean our energy sources. It's not enough to switch on electric cars. It's not enough to eat less or even perhaps no meat. And we will have to do all of these things in the next years. We will have to change our consumption patterns, our consumer behavior, all of it. And still, it's not going to be enough, especially not for our children. And we owe it to them that we do all of those things. But still, we need to put in place mechanisms how to adapt to the catastrophes as the one that hit Slovenia 3 weeks ago, because they will happen. And we can only address this at the international level. No nation, especially not small nations, can face it alone. Even big nations, they cannot face it alone. And this is one message that we will definitely bring on the table during our residency in the UN Security Council. We want to put climate agenda at the top of the agendas. That is what is going to be our primary agenda. And one reason why I think we may be successful, not because of the catastrophe that we faced 3 weeks ago, because I believe that being from a small country with no specific particular interest, no agenda of our own, that makes us a very honest broker, if we want to be, if we are brave enough to undertake that role. And yes, I can tell you right now, we are brave enough. That's the reason why we made a candidacy. We want to be honest broker. We want to be sincere, perhaps addressing the issues that bigger nations are somehow neglecting due to their own national agendas. Well, we don't have any. That makes us perfect to tackle the most difficult problems. And yes, the other one is definitely be how to bring peace to Ukraine. It is practically impossible at this time, perhaps. But we will invest all of our knowledge, all of our time to this one particular goal. Whether we're going to be successful or not, no one can tell. But will we try? Yes, we will. Because this is the single most important immediate topic on the table of United Nations. And that's the only place where this war can end, at the table in United Nations. And we will do everything we can to bring it forth. Finally, I'm really glad to have all of you, my dear colleagues from the Western Balkans here. I'm glad that you all got here. Nobody is missing. Just this in itself, it's a huge success, but it doesn't stop here. Because the message that I want to impart, and I'm pretty sure that Charles will do it in a much even more concrete way, but the message that I want to impart is that the momentum is changing. Due to Russian aggression on Ukraine, the stance of European Union member states regarding the enlargement of European Union got totally new perspective. Things are changing rapidly. In the next 12 months, I'm pretty sure that the enlargement process will get not just traction, but will get a new outlook. And I urge all of you to not be left behind. I urge all of you to continue pressing on with the reforms, but also to be aware of what's going on regarding the changes within the European Union itself. We all know that we will have to reform our processes within the European Union. And as I say, these reforms either happen within the next 12 months or they may not happen for a very long time. This is an occasion that shall not be overlooked. Slovenia will remain strong supporter for your admission, and Slovenia will continue to do all those things that are necessary within European Council as well, but also together with the dialogue with the Commission to make it possible for you to become a member of our European family, to put you where you belong. And I think this is the last message that I wanted to impart. And as I said, none of these challenges that I addressed are going to be easy to meet. None. We will have to work hard. We will use tons of money, especially for the floods relief and the reconstruction. It will take a lot of time. But we need to find both courage and wisdom. And we will, in order to show that, yes, we can. We can build a better world. A world based on solidarity. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the European Council, Mr. Charles Michel.
Dear President, dear Prime Minister Robert Golob, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Yesterday, I visited a few areas hit by the recent floods, and it was truly shocking. But I also witnessed the remarkable courage of the Slovenian people, and I've also been impressed by the focus and determination of the Slovenian authorities and by the leadership of the Prime Minister Robert Golob. And you are right, dear Prime Minister, you are not alone. Slovenia is not alone. The EU is also lending a strong supportive hand along with our member states, along with our partners like Ukraine and the Western Balkans. And it made the title of this year's forum, Solidarity for Global Security, even more resonant. Solidarity. Solidarity, this is what reinforces the fabric of a community. Solidarity, this is what gives us the power to stand strong against life's greatest challenges. And this same solidarity is at the very heart of European integration. It makes our European Union stronger, so you won't be surprised that today I want to talk about solidarity. Today, I want to talk about enlargement. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we are facing unprecedented and interconnected crises. And these summers, natural disasters in Greece, in Slovenia, and across the globe are urgent reminders why we need to manage our transition to climate neutrality. The war in Europe on Ukrainian soil has shown that peace and democracy cannot be taken for granted. And this war is not just devastating Ukraine. This war has a profound impact on the future of our continent, has a profound impact on global security. COVID-19 also taught us some hard lessons. Global health security is not a given, even in developed countries. And faced with these challenges, the EU has shown we are able to act boldly and decisively when needed. We were the first in the world to decide to make our continent climate neutral by 2050. And when faced with the first global pandemic in a century, we stood together to agree very quickly on a massive recovery plan. And, ladies and gentlemen, when Russian forces decided to invade Ukraine, the Kremlin and probably others expected a weak response, a divided Europe. They got the opposite. In just a few hours, on February 24th, a meeting I will never forget in the European Council in Brussels, we responded with massive sanctions against Russia, massive support for Ukraine, and deliveries of weapons and ammunition to Ukraine. A different EU revealed itself on that day, fast, determined, united, and more decisive. And, ladies and gentlemen, when Vladimir Putin decided to launch an energy missile at us, we responded with a powerful energy shield, a true energy defense system, by diversifying our energy sources and breaking our over-dependence on Russian fossil fuels. We energized our alliances with our strategic partners. Solidarity. Solidarity was our guiding light for all these decisive decisions and actions. But, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, in today's increasingly complex world, we as Europeans, we have crucial choices to make. Are we content with a European Union that only manages crisis? Or do we want to be a leading global actor that shapes the future? Are we resigned to a bipolar confrontational world? Or do we want to help build a multipolar world anchored in global cooperation? We have already become more influential. For instance, on climate neutrality, we became more assertive by confronting Russia's aggression, or even more realistic by working with partners not fully aligned with our values. We are also working hard to help remodel the global approach to development. It's essential to making the world safer and more prosperous. And we want to be more influential, to shape a better world, and we want to be stronger, to be a stronger ally. And that's why we are building our strategic autonomy brick by brick. Ladies and gentlemen, to be stronger, to be safer, the EU needs to reinforce our bonds and become more powerful. And that's why it is now time to tackle the challenge of enlargement, both for us in the EU and for our future member states. And yes, I believe this is how we should now call the countries with confirmed EU perspective, future member states. It's time to get rid of the ambiguities. It's time to face the challenges with clarity and with honesty. The road to the EU for the Western Balkans began more than 20 years ago, a region at the heart of Europe, surrounded by the EU. It was also a region emerging from conflict after the breakup of Yugoslavia. And the Thessaloniki Summit in 2003 confirmed the European perspective of the Western Balkans. But the slow pace of this EU journey has disappointed many, both in the region and in the EU. And I agree with Chancellor Olaf Scholz when he says Europe must keep its promises. As we speak, the people of Ukraine are heroically defending their country, their homeland, their future. And the Kremlin is not only attacking a free and sovereign neighbor, the Kremlin is attacking all that we believe in: freedom, democracy, prosperity, and the spirit of cooperation and mutual respect. So, in June last year, we decided to grant the candidate status to Ukraine and Moldova, and the same status awaits Georgia when they complete the necessary steps. So, now, enlargement is no longer a dream. It's time to move forward. There is still a lot of work to do. It will be difficult. It will be complex, sometimes painful for the future member states and for the EU. But let's be clear. If we want to be credible, I believe we must talk about timing. We must talk about our homework. And I have a suggestion. As we prepare the EU's next strategic agenda, we must set ourselves a clear goal. I believe we must be ready on both sides by 2030 to enlarge. And this means that the EU's next long-term budget will need to include our common goals. This is, I know, ambitious, but it is necessary. It shows that we are serious. It will build momentum. It will give a transformative boost to reforms, and it will generate interest, investment, and better understanding. It will also encourage all of us to work better together. The window of opportunity is open. We need to act on it, and that's why EU leaders will discuss enlargement at our next European Council meetings. We will take a stand on the opening of negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova, and I also expect Bosnia and Herzegovina and Georgia to be back on the table. My dear Western Balkan friends, you have made your aspirations extremely clear, and I want you to succeed. So what will it take? First, rule of law. Our union is founded on the fundamental values of human rights and dignity, democracy and solidarity. And the rule of law ensures we can live, we can work, we can create, we can trade fairly in one big area of liberties, in full respect for our diversity. In the EU, each citizen, each company must trust that they will be treated fairly wherever they live or do business, and this includes respecting the rights of minorities. Enlargement is and will remain a merit-based process, because membership of the Union brings both responsibilities and benefits, and to take on the former and reap the latter in a highly competitive environment, you need to be ready. And this means, indeed, to make sure the judiciary can play its independent role in fighting corruption and organized crime. It also means being ready economically, in particular by adopting the EU acquis and standing with us in foreign policy, more important today than ever. Third point, addressing bilateral and regional issues. Resolving bilateral conflicts from the past may be more painful than reforms, but it's necessary. And in fact, you are walking the same path as the founding members of our union. There is no cooperation without reconciliation. And I would like to be clear, there is no room for past conflicts within the EU. And young people, especially the young, they want to be inspired by a brighter, fairer, more prosperous future. And joining our union would be splendid proof of a collective success. Ideally, you would all join together. Yet, future member states are at a different stage on their journey to the EU, but we need to make sure that past conflicts are not imported into the EU and used or even abused to block the accession of their neighbors and future member states. And here, a small idea. One way could be to add a so-called confidence clause in the accession treaties to ensure that countries that just joined cannot block future member states. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, to address all these challenges, the EU is trying to strengthen our support for you, but I know that we need to do more to close the development gap. And first, through progressive and gradual integration into EU policies, so the benefits can be felt more quickly by the population, even before membership. I put forward this idea last year, and the European Council supported it. And the Commission's enlargement package, expected in October, is, I think, a good opportunity to outline the concrete details of this progressive integration. And this could take place in different areas. For instance, the single market. We have ambitious frameworks in place that support the alignment of future member states with the EU acquis, and they can take advantage of existing options such as the energy and transport communities. I propose that we use these frameworks to phase in future member states and to integrate them into specific EU policy areas once conditions are fulfilled. For instance, another idea, a country could participate in a corresponding council formation once they complete the negotiation in the given policy chapter. In the same spirit, we have established the principle of yearly EU Western Balkan summits. And I will convene our next EU Western Balkan Summit in December in Brussels, back-to-back with our European Council meeting. Another area for gradual integration could be security and defense. We could invite interested future member states to more actively participate in some policies or instruments like CFSP missions or the Defense Fund or the European Peace Facility. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU also needs to get ready for enlargement. And I fully agree with what President Macron said. Not reforming on our side before the next enlargement would be a fundamental mistake. And let's be honest, we have sometimes used, maybe we have abused, the lack of progress of future member states to avoid facing our own homework, our own preparedness. We must now take a serious look at the EU's capacity to absorb new members. And I know this idea is sometimes misunderstood as a hidden obstacle to accession. To the contrary, it only makes sense for new member states to join a union that's functioning well, that's efficient. It also makes sense for the existing member states if it creates new opportunities. Integrating new members into our union won't be easy. We all know that. It will affect our policies, our programs, and their budgets. It will require political reforms. It will require a lot of political courage. The EU's territory and demography will get bigger, and yet its relative prosperity will not immediately follow. Significant funds will be needed to help countries catch up, and we need to make sure that the EU budget brings European added value for all. The GDP of the future member states is about 50 or 70% of the smallest EU economy. And this means they will be net recipients, while several current net recipients will become net contributors. So we need to work on how to manage this complex transition. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU's decision-making process has made a quantum leap in recent years. Yet we can do more to speed up our decision-making. More members will mean more diversity, and we will have to adapt our institutional framework and procedures so an enlarged EU is able to take efficient and timely decisions. And on the very sensitive and very difficult topic of unanimity, I personally believe that completely scrapping unanimity could be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Because unity is at the core of the EU's strength. Unity is the best way to make sure decisions are uniformly implemented, and of course we know there are various ways to get united. For instance, when we decided to activate the peace facility to finance arms delivery to Ukraine, constructive abstention was used to not impede unanimity. And there are different ways to adapt the qualified majority, whether in numbers or when and how we apply it. We know this will be a hard nut to crack. Again, it will be difficult, but there is no way to avoid this debate now. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, let me share with you my personal conviction, not more than that. The heart of enlargement is, in my opinion, not about processes, screenings, assessments, negotiations, treaties. The heart of enlargement is about the people, about the future of our children, about the fate of Europe. So we need to make sure that we have the hearts of the people with us, the hearts of the people with us. This may be our biggest challenge. This involves explaining the EU. This involves highlighting the benefits, and it's a choice of society. It also means moving beyond the language of the past to focus on the future. With real political will, we can make both the EU and the future member states ready. Now, you have understood, is this the time to be bold? No, this is the time to build our larger European future all together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, President Michel, for your words. And now, the next speaker, I don't really have to introduce because over the years he already became a household name. But I'm always happy to announce him simply because this means that my job here on stage is done. And ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor, it's my pleasure to introduce your moderator for today, Mr. Ali Aslan.
Thank you so much, Peter. Indeed, your job may be done, but we will see much more of you, of course, throughout the next 2 days. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we get down to business, I too, of course, would like to start by expressing my heartfelt condolences and sympathies to the Slovenian people and communities affected by these devastating floods. Slovenia, ostani močna. This is what I wish for all of you. Now, for those who've taken part in the BSF in previous years, you may have seen me up here 1 or 2 times. I've had the privilege and pleasure of being part of this strategic forum since 2018, and I can tell you it's always a great delight to be back. Each year the forum manages to bring together an outstanding group of people to discuss the most pressing global issues that we're facing. And I think we can all agree, especially those who've been here throughout the years, its success is in large part due to the tireless work of its Secretary General, Peter Gürk, and his fabulous, fantastic team who succeed in raising the bar year in, year out. And I think this is a right and good moment to express our appreciation to them. Thank you so much. And for those who've been with us for a number of years, you also know that the Bled Strategic Forum traditionally kicks off with the leaders panel, and of course this year won't be an exception. You see the seats right behind me, though judging by the numbers of seats, this is more like a leaders summit rather than a leaders panel that we're going to have here in just a moment. But once again, it speaks testament to the success of this forum that they are gathering so many outstanding leaders. And I'm very much looking forward, Michel, of course, to pick up from where you left off the important words that you uttered and address them to our prestigious panelists who will be gracing this stage now, and they will be introduced in alphabetical order. First up, he's the Prime Minister of Montenegro. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dritan Avazovic. Hello, Prime Minister. It's good to have you. She is the Prime Minister of Serbia. Great to have her with us. Ana Brnabić. Hello. It's good to have you. It's right there. We're going down the row. He's the newly appointed Prime Minister I'm very delighted to welcome the newly appointed Prime Minister of Bulgaria. Nikolai Denkov, of course, is here. Good to have you with us. Very delighted to welcome on stage the Prime Minister of North Macedonia. Dimitar Kovacevski is here, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you again, as always. She is the chairwoman of the Council of Ministers of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Ladies and gentlemen, Borjana Kristo. Welcome, ma'am. Right there. He's the Prime Minister of Kosovo. Good to have him with us. Albin Kurti, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, sir. It's good to have you. And with the last two gentlemen, I've already had the pleasure of sharing the stage last here on this very stage, so it's good to welcome them back. First up, he's the Prime Minister of Croatia, of course, Prime Minister Andrej Plenkovic. Yeah. And last, but certainly not least, great to welcome him back on the stage, the Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama. Okay. It's great to have you all with us. Much to talk about. Of course, the theme for this year's Bled Strategic Forum is called Solidarity for Global Security. And in turbulent times like these, I think it goes without saying that European unity, cooperation, solidarity is needed more than ever. Prime Minister Golob has already pointed out that Slovenia has experienced and enjoyed a remarkable display of solidarity and cooperation in the aftermath of the floods. EU countries have stepped in quickly to provide assistance to this country. But solidarity, of course, is also of essence when it comes to the issue of EU enlargement. We just heard the President of the European Council, Michel, very strong words saying the EU must be ready to accept new member states by 2030. Prime Minister Plenkovic, as the country that has been accepted to the European Union last in 2013, your country has just joined the Euro and the Schengen area, so clearly a success story. From your experience as somebody who's been there, as somebody who was admitted to the European Union in 2013, what is the friendly advice? What are the words of encouragement that you can impart with your counterparts here on stage that are still aspiring to become a member of this club?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me greet Slovenian President, Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign and European Affairs, and also express my sympathy for the losses that Slovenia had in these horrible floods that occurred during the beginning of August. And I would like to, in the context of today's topic, express the solidarity of Croatia, which was materialized in our assistance swiftly and concretely, and I'm happy that our military will actually build one bridge over a river in one of the Slovenian municipalities, that thus demonstrating what is the good neighborly relations and what is solidarity in the time of need. Indeed, Croatia has been a member of the European Union for 10 years, and there is a novelty since our last debate a year ago, that we have in the meantime managed to be the only country of the European Union ever to join on the same day the Eurozone and the Schengen area, and that has certainly mean the realization of our strategic objectives for the deeper integration, and certainly strengthened Croatia's international positioning and also deeper integration within the European Union. What would be advice? My view on the enlargement process stems, let's say, almost 30 years ago, but I will start with Zagreb summit in 2000, when Jacques Chirac was the president of France, and he brought the first Western Balkan summit to Zagreb. So 23 years have passed, and we are the only country from the region who has joined after Slovenia, of course, in the Big Bang enlargement in 2004. This has certainly meant a lot of work, a lot of reforms at home, but also changing context. During the informal debate today, some people believe that it's good that everybody joins together at the same time in order to avoid bilateral problems. I disagree with that. I think that the merit-based approach, individual countries' merits should be kept, because that's only fair. And at the same time, no bilateral issues which are unrelated with the acquis should be mixed with the enlargement process. This is our experience. This is what we fully believe. And I think there is a growing sense of understanding among everyone, both in the region and within the European Union, that this should be the way forward. So keep up with the reform process, ensure the political stability at home, keep the momentum, and strive I would say, for more enthusiasm rather than cynicism due to many years of waiting for many countries in the region.
And this is, of course, now the time to seize the opportunity. And certainly the EU is making a clear stand here. We've already heard that the Ukraine war, of course, in many ways has brought new urgency and momentum to the enlargement process. Last year, the EU granted candidate status to Ukraine, Moldova, and Bosnia, and started accession talks with North Macedonia, and of course, your country, Prime Minister Rama. Last time we were on the stage here, you coined this beautiful phrase when I asked you how you feel about the future of the Western Balkans. You said you are tragically optimistic. Now that there's actually a figure attached to your aspirations, is that the much needed impetus, much needed motivation now to also fulfill your part?
With this panel like a bus, I am even more tragically optimistic, you know. This is like, although it's better than a Russian plane, I must say. So, first of all, I want to thank very much Robert and Charles, not because I know how to be a good diplomat, I am not, but because of the very warm welcome and the very, very open and I would say heartfelt conversation we had last evening. And I'm very happy to see a leader, a politician, to speak same in a dinner and in front of a forum. So thank you, Charles. Finally, thank you. It was amazing. And it's really the moment to say that if what Charles said will materialize in terms of some real steps forward, not that I believe that in 2030 we'll be in the European Union, frankly, but at least in some of the steps that would be really very good. Because while we speak about converging with the European Union, everyone has to understand that the gap of contribution per capita of the European Union towards between the, let's say, this region member states and the Western Balkan states is something like 137 euro for 6 of us here and more than 4,000 euro for 2 of us here, and also others. So this somehow has to be understood and has to be addressed with some concrete steps, considering that this should not be nothing or all. So from the moment all these countries have entered the EU path to the moment they become members, should be things in the middle, not just principles, values, and lessons, which are absolutely very necessary, not just reforms and criticism, which is absolutely necessary, but also some more consistent support. And I'm not saying simply financially, but also in terms of the access of our countries in the common market and of a much more open space also for our enterprises. Because, and I'll conclude here, everyone has to bear in mind that what is happening all these years in these countries is that on one hand, through the Berlin process, we talk about connectivity and infrastructure and about projects and about how to finance all this. On the other hand, guess who is building the infrastructure? Americans, Chinese, Arabs, who I know have not an acquis to fulfill when they come in, but this should be somehow taken in consideration. And so last point is that I have always thought that working pro bono 50 years against the West and Verhoja made us the most pro-European and pro-American people. So it will need 50 years after the fall of communism until we are not unconditionally pro-West, pro-American, pro-European. So we have 20 years more of Euro optimism, and we hope that until then you'll fulfill your promise, Charles.
Well, there you go. There you go. The message has been delivered. Prime Minister Varnavić, you have said recently Serbia has no plan B regarding the EU, implying that is the only way. EU membership is the way forward for Serbia. That's a bit different than what President Vučić said at the beginning of this year. He said Serbia is no longer enthusiastic about EU membership. Do you still have to convince your president?
I'd say, first of all, thank you. Big thanks to the hosts. It really is great to be here. And condolences for all of the victims. And I'm happy that Serbia was able to send support and rescue teams and firefighters and everyone else, all of the rescue teams from different sectors to help and support our friends in Slovenia. And we will stay open to continue sending support. I would say that it's in no way different than what I've said. President Vučić is 100% right. There is a huge Euroscepticism in Serbia. And it really is due to the fact that, as Prime Minister Plenkovic said, you know, we've been waiting for more than 20 years. All of us have been doing different kind of things, you know. My friend, Prime Minister of North Macedonia, are changing their names and still finding it difficult to even get a date to start negotiations. When you look at Serbia, you know that from the point of from the point when you start negotiations, which in our case was 2014, 10 years have passed. You're still in negotiations. So to get a date to start negotiating actually means nothing. It means a lot to people in the Western Balkans. It means a lot to people in North Macedonia. It means a lot to people in Albania. Doesn't mean anything for the people in the EU member states. But give them a date. And so you know, people in Serbia see that, and they do feel that, as I said yesterday in the conversation during the dinner, that EU has this this view towards the Western Balkans that whatever you do, it's not good enough. You know, if you're a girl and you come and they say, well, your skirt is a bit too long, go and change. Then you come and they say, your skirt is a bit too short, go and change. And you come and you say, well, this sleeve is not looking good. And it's this kind of never-ending process with actually a lot of moving goalposts as well. So you don't really know what to do, and people get tired. I do think that not just Serbia, neither one of us has a better option or a plan B. We are European countries. We are in the middle of the European Union. So I've heard Eddie once said, also a fantastic sentence, it's not about enlargement. You are not enlarging, you are encompassing it. Because we are from all of the sides surrounded by the European Union. We are geographically part of Europe. We are economically, culturally, historically, in every way part of Europe. Most of our foreign direct investments are from EU. Most of the jobs created are by EU companies. Our exports are mostly into the EU or, secondly, within the region of the Western Balkans. We are part of the European family of nations, and I think it would be good for, obviously, us, but I think it would be essentially good for European Union to also do that final step and make that brave political decision to just encompass the Western Balkans into the European family of nations.
Provided, of course, that certain reforms will be fulfilled. One of them, of course, which we will hardly surprising will get into in the later round about the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. But I do want to pick up on the frustration of the people that you've talked about, because that's something, Prime Minister Kovacevski, that you know all too well. Your country has had candidate status since 2005. You met recently with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who afterwards tweeted, North Macedonia belongs in the European Union. But since 18 years since obtaining the candidate status, we do see frustration. I have a recent poll result, the 2023 Balkan Barometer shows that only 50% of respondents in your country still consider EU membership a positive prospect. That's a challenge to turn it around, isn't it?
Well, first, thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this panel. It's a pretty wide panel from Zagreb to Ljubljana. So, you see, Charles mentioned Thessaloniki 2003. And if you want to ask someone for being part of the process, then you were right to choose me to answer. At that time, we were not Macedonia, we were Macedonia. Montenegro was not independent, and Kosovo was not independent. So that's how long the process took. And when you say 50% are pro-EU, then I would say this is a great optimism after 20 years. You mentioned the frustration. Yes, there is a great deal of frustration. There are other researches of the public opinion which say that 80% of the citizens of North Macedonia are for Euro integration and pro-European, but at the same time, 80% of the citizens are against blockades which are coming one after another. And these blockades are coming from member countries in waves, which are used mainly for their domestic politics, not for international sin. And that's why I'm encouraged from the first time type of a statement like that done by President Michel, which he did today, that European Union should and will validate its will for enlargement. Why? Because now we are talking about enlargement, not only in the European Union, but also this is the key word in NATO. You know that we were the youngest member of NATO, North Macedonia, but not anymore, because now it's Finland. And if I draw a parallel, how good we are as countries, then you see, as members of NATO, we proved to be great partners. We didn't let grass grow over our feet, but we proved to be very active partners in NATO. And so far, I haven't seen any problem within the functioning of NATO with Albania, Montenegro, and North Macedonia being part of NATO. So if we make the parallel with the European Union, then yes, this is the only alternative. Why? Because the economies are connected. And our people work and live in the European Union when they live abroad. I had the chance to see my Macedonians which work and live in Koper. But also, I noticed that when you are going on the Riviera, it's like you are in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And because all the waiters are coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Why? For higher salaries. And when I asked them, how are you, they said it cannot be worse. Because we are working on 50 degrees on the sun, on the terraces. And then I saw a few Macedonian students which work in the cafe bars. And you know what they told me? Please make everything to put our country in the European Union. We want to go back home and work in a European Union country, but at home, not here in Slovenia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure these encounters with your fellow countrymen pleading you to fulfill the criteria and speed up the EU process is motivation enough. Prime Minister Denkov, after 5 elections in 2 years, now you are the new Prime Minister of Bulgaria. And we're talking, of course, today a lot about what the aspiring potential candidates and member states have to fulfill. But of course, it takes two to tango. And there are some disputes, some bilateral disputes perhaps, and blockades that some EU member states can also lift an approach to. You yourself, Bulgaria, has been a member since 2007, and it's no secret that your blockade on North Macedonia's EU accession negotiations demanding constitutional changes for the Bulgarian minority there have been an impeding reason and obstacle. I see the two of you are sitting together now on this stage. Dare I say, interpreted that as a good sign and a new approach on the part of your country?
Okay, so first, thank you for the host to gather all of us together. We were together maybe 2 weeks ago in Thessaloniki. It is a good sign. We gather more often, we can discuss more often, we can understand each other better. So maybe I have to play the role of the bad cop here in a way. But let me clarify that Europe is not a geographical, or European Union is not a geographical entity. Europe is about values, because if we look only for geographical entities, we can select different geography regions, we can say Eurasia is even bigger, better, and so on and so forth. So what have to unite us in the European Union? These are the values, not the geography. And I say this with a clear understanding that we have also our homework to do in Bulgaria. It's not something that we have not to deal with. It's not a secret that Bulgaria is also blocked by, let's say, the Netherlands and Austria to be part of the Schengen region, the Schengen zone. So I know what is the feeling when you make your efforts and then you're blocked by someone, probably in a way that you consider non-justified. So for me, it is extremely important to define we are those people that want to be in Europe. And just to give me the example, what we do for Schengen area today. So we are relatively new government, as you said, but we made the list of the things that we have to do. There is literally day-by-day schedule for what have to be done in the parliament, what have to be done in the government, in a way to make our homework 100%, to be sure that when we go to negotiate with the others, there is nothing they can say is wrong in our home. So from this viewpoint, I think this is an effort that should be bilateral or multilateral, and this is the way we approach it. Dimitar was very right. Very often this is just a domestic political problem that you try to resolve in such a way, fighting with your neighbors. But I can say that this is not my problem. I mean, this is not something that I'll ever do, and I'll never try to do it. And that's why I think we can sit down next to each other without any problem. The problem is that there are other people that are very successful of using it. And that's why we have to use any possible window that we have, the window today, the window of the next several months, to do whatever is possible. And because everyone is staring at Bulgaria and saying, okay, why you stop them because of this change in the constitution? Let me ask the other question. Why there will be a problem to have Bulgarians as part of the list of the maybe 10 nations that are included or have to be included in the Constitution of Macedonia? So personally, this is not my personal problem. This is a political problem, but this political problem now is part of the negotiations between North Macedonia and European Union, and I hope that will be resolved as it is defined in the projects. So I'll be more than happy to have all these countries next time when we gather together, have already started the negotiations. I'd love to have this, because I believe there is one Balkan Peninsula as a region, economically, geographically. I hope it will be also politically. But let me state again, we have quite a lot of homework to do ourselves in our countries.
Yeah. The homework still has to be done. At the end of the day, the EU is not just a geographic region, but an alliance of values. And one country that has been trying to do its homework for many years on that regard is, of course, Montenegro. Prime Minister Abazovic, good to have you with us. The EU talks opened in 2012 and are still ongoing. Now, at the Prespa Forum in North Macedonia, you recently said, and I quote, "It's not only enough to say, yes, the door is open, please come, if you're ready, you're acceptable. Something needs to be done," you said, meaning give us a date, make something concrete. Now we heard European Council President Charles Michel on this very stage say 2030 is certainly the date we want to see enlargement. Is that something you can live with?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to congratulate President, Prime Minister and all government of Slovenia and, of course, staff of Bled Strategic Forum for this great organized, and express my solidarity with the people of Slovenia and to say that the Montenegrin people are in disposal with our capacity to help always our friends. We are a Euro-optimistic country of sun and fun, and if it's one country which is perfect to relive the enlargement process, that is Montenegro. No problem with the neighbors, finally deliver result in fighting against corruption and organized crime, so rule of law is going better and better. But the question is, maybe it's too critical. We discussed last night, and I appreciate a lot President Michel, that sometimes EU leaders don't know exactly what they want. We know exactly what we want. We want to be part of EU. This is as soon as possible. We know exactly what we want. I am not sure that time by time EU leadership know what they want. Because if we want to have the extension of EU, which I think that is the two-way street, it's not only interest of Western Balkan to be part of EU. It's also interest of EU to somehow to involve, to integrate Western Balkan. This is question of security. This is question of future economical development in the globalized world. And I think that if we look in that way, especially after aggression of Russia Federation to Ukraine, if we don't change something, be sure that I think that after that we can come to some Euro-skepticism, and maybe we will give the possibility to some another third sides be more involved in the Western Balkan, and maybe in one moment Western Balkan countries, we don't have that kind of enthusiasm to join EU. The question is, no question, I like this comment, what my friend Dmitry say about the workers. Our people are integrated in EU. We don't have workers in our country because everybody are in EU. And the question is, how is it possible that our people are welcome in the EU and our state is not welcomed in the EU? This is the question. But I don't think, and this is what I not agree with Dmitar, he knows me that I support him in many aspects. If we wait to be part of EU to bring people back, EU will never open the door for us. Because the question is how we can make the close partnership and to use this region like not to look in the Western Balkan like a region of crisis, like a regions of conflict, but a region which can give the new, let's say, opportunity for the development of the EU. You have the BRICS country. BRICS country decide to have more members, which is okay, legitimate thing. I think that interest of EU is to have more members. It's to give, this is the question of solidarity, and I am glad to hear that from Prime Minister of Slovenia. So 2030, this is my last comment for us, for Montenegro. It's too far. Yeah. We cannot change the opinion of EU, but the key thing is that to know exactly what are the rules. Yeah. If they say to Montenegro, or to North Macedonia, or to Kosovo, or to Albania, or to Serbia, do this, and if you finish this, you have this, I think that is the fair. But it's not fair to say, do this, and after that, if you do it that, to say, okay, this is good, maybe this is not the moment, we're waiting for something else. And to conclude, in the name of the government of Montenegro, we are not selfish at all in the context of integration. Yeah. We're supporting that with Ukraine and with any another European country to go on into integration. But I think that it's not a good idea to wait for some conflict in Western Balkans and after that to wake up and to say, bring these countries inside of EU. I think that is much smarter to think that let's see, let's do it with the countries which are probably ready or will be ready for some time, and of course to keep the open door for every single country which want to share, I agree, values with another EU members.
I think your country's EU aspirations are clearly underlined in the winning party, of course, in the recent elections is the Europe Now movement, once again affirming your country's stance. And High Representative Josep Borrell actually recently stated Montenegro is first in line for EU membership. So clearly 2030 for you in that regard is very understandable that it's too far of a date. But perhaps Montenegro, the country of sun and fun, perhaps we can add that as a criteria, you know, at the end of the day to speed up the process. But I think your point is very well taken, and Montenegro very much perhaps on the edge and on the verge of becoming the first country since Croatia in 2013. Chairwoman Christo, great to have you with us. Of course, your country applied in 2016 and was granted candidate status last year, but it goes without saying, it's no secret that still many concerns over ethnic divisions in Bosnia remain. There are deep disagreements in Sarajevo and Banja Luka that are detrimental to the unity of the states, in particular with regard to membership. Serb leader Milorad Dodik has vowed to sabotage the accession process should it further centralize power in Bosnia. Now, the words of Charles Michel, of course, today are very encouraging, but first, it's the internal rifts within your country that have to be overcome before implementing the necessary reforms. Is that correct?
Pa prije svega hvala lijepa. Evo dopustite na početku da i ja također pozdravim našeg domaćina, premijera Goloba, naravno predsjednika Europskog vijeća gospodina Charlesa Michela, premijera Vlade Republike Hrvatske kao članica Europske unije i naravno sve lidere u regiji koji su danas s nama, napose sve sudionike ovog važnog samita ovdje u Sloveniji. Uz ove srdačne pozdrave dozvolite mi također da izrazim na poseban način potporu i suosjećanje sa premijerom Golobom za sve ovo što je Republika Slovenija, odnosno njeno stanovništvo, pretrpjelo za vrijeme ovih poplava i želim iskazati jasno i ovdje stav da je Bosna i Hercegovina učinila sve da pruži svaki vid pomoći i potpore i da ćemo to činiti dalje i napose u kontekstu ovog naziva da kažem, solidarnost kao globalna sigurnost.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to greet Prime Minister Golob, the President of the European Council, Mr. Charles Michel, all the esteemed ministers, Prime Minister Plenkovic as the Prime Minister of a country that is a member of the EU, and all the esteemed colleagues, Prime Ministers of the countries of the region, and all the participants of this traditional conference. In addition to greeting you all, allow me to express our support, my support to both Prime Minister Golob and the Republic of Slovenia and its people that have been affected by the floods. I wish to note that Bosnia and Herzegovina sent its support and assistance, and that we, of course, remain open to providing every form of support and assistance that we can to Slovenia in order to overcome the consequences of the floods.
Kazali ste da je Bosna i Hercegovina već 2016. godine predala zahtjev za prijem u članstvo u Europskoj uniji i ja želim kazati ovdje da naravno prošle godine, znači 2022. godine, najznačajniji događaj za Bosnu i Hercegovinu u pogledu procesa pristupanja bio je dobivanje kandidatskog statusa i to je za nas i u formalno-pravnom smislu jedan korak bliže ka onom zajedničkom cilju kome mi zapravo težimo.
As you said, in 2016, Bosnia and Herzegovina applied for the membership in the EU. In 2022, we were granted the candidate status, and it was one of the most significant moments in our EU accession process, and of course, a great step forward towards our mutual aim of becoming the members of the EU.
Kazali ste uz sve da mi imamo svoje unutarnje probleme. Naravno, ustavna struktura Bosne i Hercegovine je takva da je ona strukturirana kao država tri konstitutivna naroda, Hrvata, Bošnjaka i Srba, uz to da je čine dva entiteta, unutar entiteta federacija, da imamo nadležnosti županija, odnosno kantona, i to je princip i način funkcioniranja Bosne i Hercegovine koji moramo poštivati i uz svu tu složenost, ja želim reći, kad je u pitanju evropski procesi, odnosno evropske integracije, u Bosni i Hercegovini postoji puni opći i politički, odnosno institucionalni i politički konsenzus kad je u pitanju evropski put.
We have to keep in mind the fact that in terms of its organization, Bosnia and Herzegovina is a complex state that is comprised of three constituent peoples, Bosniak, Croats and Serbs. We also have two entities. The Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina also has cantons. So this is a principle upon which Bosnia and Herzegovina functions, and we all have to appreciate those principles. Even though we have this complete structure when it comes to the EU accession process, we have a general institutional and political consensus in Bosnia and Herzegovina related to the EU accession process.
Znači, u svu složenost naših političkih prilika i funkcioniranja zapravo vlasti, ja mogu reći da je Vijeće ministara Bosne i Hercegovine u ovom sazivu napravilo jedan ogroman iskorak, uskladilo svoju legislativu, dobar dio svoje legislative u pogledu jačanja demokracije, vladavine prava, borbe protiv korupcije sa akijem Evropske unije, a na poseban način u potpunosti uskladilo svoju vanjsku i sigurnosnu politiku sa politikom Evropske unije.
So despite these complexities that we have when it comes to our governance system, I have to emphasize that this Council of Ministers actually achieved a huge step forward when it comes to our legislation and in terms of strengthening democracy, the rule of law, and the fight against corruption, and aligned these principles with those of the European Union. And we have completely aligned our foreign and security policy with the European Union.
Znam da put do članstva u Evropskoj uniji nije lak i da zahtjeva mnogo posla i odlučnosti, ali ja želim ovdje jasno iskazati da kao Bosna i Hercegovina iščekujemo vrlo brzo otvaranje pregovora za pristupanje Evropskoj uniji i stava smo i mišljenja da i Evropska unija mora se nekako ili trebala bi se jasnije opredijeliti ispram procesa proširenja i naravno članstva kako Bosne i Hercegovine, tako svih zemalja regije u pristupanju evropskoj obitelji. Hvala.
We are aware of the fact that the path toward our full membership in the EU is not an easy one, but we are definitely looking forward to commencing negotiations between Bosnia and Herzegovina and the European Union as soon as possible. But we also believe that the European Union must be more clear and determined when it comes to the accession process itself, not only in terms of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also other countries. Thank you.
And perhaps the words of Charles Michel today provided a little bit of that clarity that you are looking for. Prime Minister Kurti, it's great to have you with us. Your country, of course, applied for EU membership last year. What distinguishes you from the other countries here on this panel is within the European Union, there are 5 who do not yet recognize you: Spain, Romania, Slovakia, Greece, and Cyprus. So the first task is bringing these countries on board. How optimistic are you? What is being done from your side to convince those 5 countries to come on board and proceed with the membership that you have applied for last year?
Thank you very much for the invitation and opportunity. Let me also express my condolences to family and friends of those who lost their loved ones, and to government and people of Slovenia for all the sufferings due to these floods. December 15 last year, I have handled official application of Republic of Kosovo in Prague, since there was presidency of Czech Republic back then, for membership into EU. It is true that 5 countries still do not recognize us: Greece, Cyprus, Slovakia, Romania, and Spain. We are working with them bilaterally, diplomatically, but also in Brussels. And the atmosphere with all these countries is better than before. There are some small concrete steps, and we hope that they will change their stance, and in this way join the majority of EU countries who do recognize us. 22 out of 27 countries do recognize us in the European Union, or 26 out of 30 in NATO, or 34 out of 46 in Council of Europe. One other way how we try to persuade countries who are still, let me call them skeptics, is by democratic and economic progress in Kosovo. Kosovo is a double success story. Is a success story of NATO intervention in 1999 to stop the genocide of Milosevic's Yugoslavia and Serbia at that time, and is a success story of democracy and economy going hand in hand. According to Transparency International, Freedom House, World Justice Project, Kosovo is at the top of Western Balkan 6 regarding rule of law, fight against corruption, political liberties and civil rights, and so on and so forth. So we are optimistic about times ahead, and we look forward to have more cooperation and to join EU not only to benefit but also to contribute. In Western Balkan 6, we could say that European Union is a sort of a secular religion. And I don't mean this is wrong, neither bad. It is important to be aligned in value-based policies that we do. Of course, with other countries, with Brussels, there will be this transactional aspect. But in transactional aspect, there is always this drive of becoming a sovereignist when it comes to politics, history, culture, and economy. But value-based policy brings us together, integrates us. And here I mean that first and foremost is important to have alignment regarding common security and foreign policy. In Kosovo, I have increased annual state budget for this year, in particular for healthcare, education, agriculture, and defense. We look forward to become members of Council of Europe and get Partnership for Peace program in NATO. And what I consider important for our region is to get done with these recognitions, mutual recognitions, all 6 countries of Western Balkans as a region. Because de facto and de jure recognition are divided in the Balkans. You have de facto recognition somewhere without de jure, and somewhere else you have de jure without de facto. So this has to be settled. I think it's doable, solvable. And protection of minority rights across the region. I think in a few years' time, we could become members of European Union, and I hope that also European Union, hand in hand with external enlargement, will do internal consolidation and reform.
But of course, Prime Minister, a key precondition set by the EU for your country to move forward has been the conclusion of the normalization agreement with Serbia. Recently, the US and the EU have come down very hard on your country, blaming you for provoking a crisis and escalating the situation in northern Kosovo by forcefully installing Albanian mayors. And measures have been adopted against your country in that regard, and I quote, that's what the EU said, because of Kosovo's inability to take considerable steps for de-escalation. At a time when Europe for 18 months now has been preoccupied with the war in Ukraine, is this not the right time to seize the opportunity but also de-escalate the situation? Now is the time more than ever, isn't it?
Yes, I fully agree. We need de-escalation, we need to ease tensions, and it's around 2 months now that in northern municipalities of Kosovo there has been no violent protests nor incidents. We have decreased twice by 25% the presence of Kosovo police in these municipal buildings, and I look forward to have early elections in the northern municipalities, and I hope that we're going to have a fair and open campaign for free and democratic elections. We need the help of international community, but on the other hand, I believe that people understood in Kosovo that those who integrate, they live better. So integration is something which is beneficial for the citizens, but at the same time, we as government are there to ensure equal rights for all. We have done so very much when it comes to economy, for example. In first 6 months of this year, budget revenues increased by 15.8%. In Kosovo, people pay more taxes, and this also shows fidelity to the state. And now we have had a doubling of both exports and FDI. So economy, which is doing better in Kosovo, especially in these last 2 years, helps integration.
The escalation is, of course, what we're talking about. And the same thing, of course, Prime Minister Barnavic, goes for your country. The EU has made very clear that the completion of the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue is a precondition for your country's EU membership talks to advance. Now, I already mentioned that EU and the US have criticized Kosovo for the situation in northern Albania, but at the same time, there are top US and EU lawmakers who say the West is too soft on Serbia when it comes to easing Kosovo tension and is not putting enough pressure on your country. Now, you both want to be part of the European family. You want to be both part of the European Union to be adopted as a member. These escalations are hurting not just Kosovo, but also your country. Can we expect some positive steps also from your country moving forward?
Well, firstly, I have to say that for me, it's one country. There are no two countries. There are not both countries. Kosovo, as the so-called Republic of Kosovo, is not an internationally recognized country. It's not a member of the UN. And yes, obviously, I doubt that it will become part of the EU, at least until there is a 5 non-recognizers. I would say that the normalization, which is in the interest of both Belgrade and Pristina, which is in the interest of both Serbs and Albanians, which is in the interest of the entire region, is something that is very high up on the list of our priorities. The normalization starts with the Brussels Agreement, signed in April 2013, so more than 10 years ago, as the first agreement on normalization between Belgrade and Pristina. co-signed by the European Union and the EU High Representative. The only one and only thing that Pristina needed to do, in accordance with the Brussels Agreement as the first agreement on normalization, is the establishment of the Community of Serb Municipalities. Almost 11 years later, there is everything but the establishment of Community of Serb Municipalities. And Mr. Kurti says that the Brussels Agreement does not exist for him. Let me remind you once again, that is the first agreement on normalization, that it needs to be implemented. And the European Union is the guarantor for the full implementation of that agreement. So what we are waiting for is the Community of Serb Municipalities. Everything else, we live for peace and stability. It is in our vested interest to keep and preserve peace and stability in the region. Thank you.
Prime Alvin Kurti, 10 seconds reply.
Support in Kosovo for European Union is 94%, in Serbia is like 35%. We have put sanctions against Russian Federation. Serbia is not thinking about it. They didn't distance themselves from neither from Milosevic nor from Putin. So it's not easy for us. I want to normalize relations, and I would immediately do that, for example, if my neighbor would have been Czech Republic. But normalization of relations with Serbia are much more difficult. Yeah. It can happen because we need to implement this basic treaty that President of Serbia and myself agreed in Brussels. But normalization in psychology means absence of confusion between reality and fantasy. And that's another register where I cannot contribute, unfortunately.
Prime Minister Plenkovic, already we're seeing why there are still difficulties despite the positive tone set forth by Charles Michel today and generally the moment to be seized. Indeed, there are some who believe that Western Balkan countries are actually less ready for EU membership than they were 5 years ago. We have actually the EU Special Representative for the Balkans, Miroslav Lajčák, on record writing for the Bled Strategic Times, saying, at current rate, no candidate will be joining in the next decade. So as your counterpart, Prime Minister Denkov said, who said, let me be the bearer of bad news, there's still a lot of work here to be done, isn't it?
Well, if I may just to a little bit underpin what Charles has said, I think he said that 2030 should be the year that we should strive for when both the European Union on one side and the candidate countries are ready. I don't think he has set a fixed date that 2030 everything will be over. I remember
of course not.
years ago when we were very impatient, just as the colleagues are today, then some of the senior politicians from, at the time, EU member states used to use the phrase, please, sense of realism. Yeah. Sense of realism in terms how the things will unfold, because what was, I don't know, 2006 for us, it was very late, ended up eventually to 2013. So I think it's very good that there is some sort of a time frame that is being put ahead. But what the debate today demonstrates how many open issues there are between the countries. And that's why I said at the beginning we can't have an unblock approach. I mean, Croatia's strategic foreign policy goal for years was to destroy the regional approach of the European Commission, which was divided in '97. We managed when it comes to our own interest because it would have been detrimental. If the approach was still valid, then we wouldn't be members for 10 years. So I shouldn't say anything more about the logic that we are saying. I think everybody understands. Second point is that all the bilateral issues which are not formally, strictly, legally related with the acquis should be eliminated from the process of accession. That's the only way to go forward. And I'm speaking from experience. Yeah. And that's not really quantum physics. to establish. So we should be very correct in that respect. But I would like to point another thing. I think the whole enlargement debate across Europe has been actually accelerated now due to the Russian aggression against Ukraine. If this hadn't happened, then the process would have been very mellowish with the new negotiations methodology that we adopted during the Croatian presidency back in March 2020. So I think that the strategic threat for the security of the European continent, for the stability, for the economic situation, energy situation, and then in turn our own social peace internally, is actually moving the process forward. And that's why I think we are discussing now the political momentum rather than the technicalities and the bilateral issues. For bilateral issues, I think we should have a principled position. You can have bilateral issues, but if they are not related with the key, we couldn't care less for the accession negotiations. And that should be accepted by the current EU members. This is my point. And I think the North Macedonia example is emblematic. I mean, they've been waiting for 15 years to address the Greek issue. Once it's addressed now, we have another issue. And this is not fair. This is detrimental for the image of the European Union. I've been saying this publicly for years. And I will continue to say that, especially from the experience of Croatia. But I think in December of this year, we should make concrete decisions, country by country, based on the Commission recommendations, because next year we have a year of relevant global elections, Russian elections, European elections, American elections. By the time we set up new institutions, we'll be in January 2025.
Yeah, so still quite some steps to be done. We are slowly running out of time here. Clearly, this is a debate that we could have continued for a long time. Many of these issues, bilateral even, would warrant a panel in and of itself. And as I believe, many of them will tomorrow when the discussion will be a bit more in depth. But to do a final quick round, Prime Minister Rama, there's a legend here. The legend here in Bled goes that if you ring the wishing bell in the church tower here on Bled Island at least 3 times, your wish actually might come true. Now, I don't know if you have time to actually do it, but hypothetically speaking, moving forward for your own country, what is the wish, particularly in regards to its future in Europe?
Listen, first of all, I have to say that I'm not impatient at all. I was impatient a lot before starting the negotiations because it looked very neurotic that they were telling us, we want to marry you, but we don't want to talk to you. Now that we are talking, we are fine. We will do our job. Because at the end, the whole process of accession talks is not convincing the EU that we are good for it, but is transforming our country. And the accession talks are, in my view, the most incredible know-how transfer on state building that humanity has created. So. But going back to the wish, I don't want to sound dark here, but I was listening to Dritan from the Sun and Fun country that mentioned something very important. There is a very natural, and it should be like this at the end, because EU is about values, is about very important principles, and this is what has created it as a project of peace based on values and principles, that Ukraine should be seen like a possible member state. But I wish this will not be on detriment of the Western Balkans. Otherwise, when Dritan was talking, I was looking and I was saying, okay, who should attack who in this panel to get the membership faster with Ukraine? And Bulgaria can easily attack North Macedonia, by no doubt. Croatia can easily attack Serbia. Serbia can easily attack Kosovo. Bosnia can attack itself, no problem. I'm sure, if we ask the Greeks to do us the favor, they'll attack us with pleasure. Montenegro can play that in the beach. And so we can be all ready to join the train with Ukraine. So this is what I would... I know it sounds a bit dark, but, you know, after this Russian plane story, we are a bit puzzled. Yeah. And closing in a different note, I don't know if you heard about Russia having this negotiation to unify the clock, because they have 9-hour difference from one part of the other of the country. And the Prime Minister went to Putin and said, Mr. President, we have a problem. I sent my family in holiday, and I called to tell them good night, and it's already morning. They are in the beach. I called Olaf Scholz to greet for the anniversary, and they say it's tomorrow. Yeah. I called Xi Jinping for the new year. They say it's still the old year. And Putin says, yeah, it happened to me. I called Prigozhin family to say sorry for your loss. The plane was not taking off yet.
Wow. Now, the last one I'll exclude from the wish list, but...
I think it's better this than talking about normalization here, because then they all become not normal after at the end. So better... Yeah.
Well, I think, particularly in the first part of your answer, I think you perfectly summarized the state of play in the Western Balkans. Prime Minister Kovacevski, before we wrap up here, what is your wish moving forward for your country in regards to its collaboration with the European Union?
Well, I have two wishes. One is that we do our best in terms of reforms. And in terms that the European Union finds strength to put the enlargement on the priority position. And then I'm convinced that because North Macedonia has shown that can make tough and brave decisions. And after each and one of them, we have came out as a stronger country. And that's why we are, at this moment, I would say, in all terms, out of all the candidate countries, the best by many means, in terms of the acquis implementation, in terms of the microfinancial stability, performance, proved by European Union reports and instruments. That's why I'm saying that the 2030 goal is achievable. And my second wish is that Eddie tells another joke. Thank you.
Chairwoman Christo, 30 seconds, please, each, so we wrap up this panel. Also, your last word, your wish moving forward.
Pa prije svega kad je u pitanju budućnost Bosne i Hercegovine, njena prije svega opstojnost, prosperitet i evropska budućnost jeste dijalog i kompromis unutar same Bosne i Hercegovine. Mislim da smo svi jako svjesni kako je strukturirana Bosna i Hercegovina i to je put kojim smo i danas došli, kojim pokušavamo riješiti pitanja. Naravno, sva ona pitanja koja se ne mogu riješiti, kazali smo, i naš cilj jeste od dobivanja kandidatskog statusa što žurnije otvoriti pregovore za pristupanje, kako bismo naravno, kao i Bosna i Hercegovina, zajedno sa zemljama regija, u cilju opstojnosti, budućnosti, sigurnosti, mira i ekonomskog osnaživanja u cijelom regionu, postali što prije članica europske obitelji.
First of all, when it comes to my wishes, looking in the future, when it comes to Bosnia and Herzegovina, we're definitely looking forward to our European future and our prosperity. We have explained the complex structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina. However, we have to deal internally with dialogues and compromises and appreciate the structure of the country that we have. We may encounter some issues that might not be resolvable immediately. However, However, that is why our hope that the negotiations will start as soon as possible is very alive, and that it will provide impulse for us to settle those issues internally.
Thank you so much. Prime Minister Barnovic, your 30 seconds wish list. 10 seconds already up.
I hope for the peace in Ukraine, and I think it will bring much more stability to the continent, and also to all of us. I hope for the peace in Ukraine.
Thank you. Prime Minister Abazovic.
Because it's very good atmosphere, our wish is to keep the good weather to extend the touristic season. Just like last comments, you know, the Western Balkan countries are okay. Just don't leave us alone. In the good company, we can be very successful.
Well, ending on a very unselfish, wish, Prime Minister Denkov.
For me, the wish list has just one point: to mature a little bit the Balkan Peninsula, to understand that we will be strong only if we are together. This is everything that we need to go forward.
All right. Thank you so much. And finally, the two of you, of Prime Minister Kurti.
Well, first thing would be to have peace and reconciliation in our region, which means mutual recognitions and minority rights and facing of the past, so no amnesty for war criminals and peace criminals for that matter, because there's a lot of smuggling and organized crime. On the other hand, I would like the entire region to join EU and NATO, so next generation would not have any of the hardships that we have been through.
Thank you. Prime Minister, thank you so much for your last remark. Prime Minister Plenkovic, as the country that entered the EU last in 2013, you're also going to get the last wish list. 30 seconds, please.
Well, first of all,
more a wish list for the ones perhaps aspiring.
To support our neighbors, to have some concrete decisions at the end of the year, rather than us all being very amusing, but most of all to stop the Russian aggression against Ukraine and get back to its full territorial integrity and get stability in Europe. And one for all of us, being fully aware that the climate change and the huge difficulties that we all have basically every year with all sorts of natural problems are going to become something that we will have to deal with on a yearly basis and increase our resilience. I think this is the biggest challenge for all of us in or outside of the European Union.
Thank you so much. After Prime Minister Rama perfectly summarized the state of play in the Western Balkans as to who's chummy with whom and not, for that matter, Prime Minister Abazovic, you said, we are good people, just don't leave us alone. And I think the words of Charles Michel today made it very clear you are not alone. This is a region that is very much not on the radar of the European Union, but perhaps even essential for the survival and continuation of the European Union moving forward in an increasingly multilateral world. Each of these issues that we have only scratched on the surface here today, I think it goes without saying, would have warranted their own panel. But suffice to say, I think we've managed, even within the relatively short amount of time, considering we had esteemed 8 leaders here, I think we managed to come up with a comprehensive message, stance, and more importantly, a position that these countries, sooner or later, belong to the European Union. Before we break, we're going to have a 15-minute break after this, so don't stray too far. Let me just wrap up by thanking each and every one of our 8 esteemed Prime Ministers, leaders. I know it's quite a lot of work for you ahead, but judging by everything I've heard up until now, I think there might be, Charles Michel, some hope for optimism moving forward. Thank you so much. This is your applause. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.